When you're an artist, you really just want to be in your studio making your art. But we all know that it's really good to build up networks and connections if you want to be commissioned or find some customers or clients. And although it can be mega frustrating at times, I still think Instagram is a good place to be doing this. Because whatever sort of art you do, if a potential client or a customer has come across you and wants to look you up, Instagram is going to be one of the first places they find you. So because of that, you want to make sure your profile page is looking its best. Now, how this translates into sales is hard to quantify. When I started growing, I didn't have a shop on my website. I've only just put that on, so nobody could buy anything from me. What I do know is that I had an exhibition a couple of months ago, and I definitely had people come to that who'd found me on Instagram. So what I would recommend is if you have a personal account, to change it to a professional one. And the reason is you get more tools on that. So you get analytics, so you can see how well your content is doing. You can put your links in. And there are two sorts, business and creator. I'd recommend going for creator because you get access to more music for when you're making reels. I'll talk about reels in a little bit. If somebody does find you on Instagram, the first thing they're going to look at is your profile page. So you want to have that set up to look its best. Now, if I show you mine, because I'm part artist, part content creator, I suppose, but I really hate that phrase. My bio is quite informal. I've got a couple of emojis in it. I think if you just want to be known for your art, maybe leave the emojis out. Just be very clear. So you could put artist as your profession. And then I would put a couple of achievements. Nothing, I don't mean your CV. You don't want to put all your qualifications there, but maybe you've won a prize, or maybe you've got a book coming out. Maybe you've had an exhibition recently, or you've got one coming up. You could put that there. And obviously you want to put, you've got links. In the old days, you could only put one link, and then that's why lots of people had these link trees. You'd click on it, and that would take you to a whole range of links. Nowadays, you can put several in, and I think you should just stick to that, because leaving that is going to just make another step for people to do. So if your links are all there, I'd put your website first though. So if you think of your grid, which is your kind of home page, as really as an online portfolio. So because of that, you want to have it looking as pleasing as possible, but don't go overboard. Don't, I mean, some people put, blocks of solid colour in between, and I think that's a bit anal myself. But if that's what you want to do that. But I think what you want to have is not many, you don't want to have sort of random pictures, especially of people that the viewer might not be at all interested. They might be very personal for you, but they're not that interested in. I would keep content like that for your stories, and I'll talk about that a bit later. But you want to make your grid to show off your art. If you're doing a carousel post, at the moment you can have 10 pictures. I think they're increasing that to 20, which seems a bit mad. And on your home grid, the first one will be shown, but sometimes when your content is shown to somebody else, the second picture might be shown. So it seems to vacillate between the first picture and the second picture. So make sure those are your two that you want to show off. It doesn't just have to be your art. You could have pictures of you doing your art or looking at some art, but make it all art related. You can pin 3 of your posts at the top, so they'll stay there until you unpin them. So they'll be the first that anybody will see when they look at your profile. So it's very good to have an introductory one. If possible, have one of a picture of you, but it doesn't have to be face on. You could be doing your art if you don't want to show your face. And this is a really interesting point, because in preparing for this video, I had a look at mine and I realised it was quite out of date because I'd done it maybe a year ago. So it's a good idea to update it. I talked about an exhibition in the future, and that's already been. So I can mention that now, and there are other things that I can mention. So every few months, do as I say, not as I do. It's a good idea to update your introductory page. And then I've also got one of my top performing reels that went down well and I thought people would like. And then my third piece is something that's a little bit more salesy, because I've got these cyanotype kits on my website and I've made content about that. So it's about that. So I think that's quite a good mix, an introductory piece, a piece that's been really popular, and one a little bit more businessy. And obviously you can change these if you produce something new and that suddenly blows up, you can put that there instead. So now the kind of thorny question of how much you show your face on Instagram. Now, I get it. A lot of artists aren't the most extroverted people, or they only are when they have to be, like they're at an exhibition or something. Mostly they just like to be in their room making their art. And also, I'd say that some of my most popular content didn't have my face at all. Although, interestingly, you could see my hands. And having that human contact, I think, makes a big difference. People want some connection with you. As I say, I don't think you have to show your face. But if you want to sell directly to customers, it's a really good way for people to get to know you and also to trust you, because as the saying goes, people buy from people. So you're much more likely to make connections and potentially sales or commissions that way. Also, if you want to do some sort of teaching like workshops or classes or online tuition, then definitely you need to show your face so that people will trust you and they know who you are. And then this brings me to, I think it's a point that isn't sort of made often enough, which I'd put it as, don't forget the social in social media. I think some people just see Instagram, if they want to put their art on it, they think, oh, I'll just show this picture, I'll put a line describing it, and that's all I'm going to do. Not only is this kind of boring, but you're missing out on the chance to interact with other people, which not only is that a nice and quite fun sometimes thing to do, it also is a useful thing to do, because the more interactions you have between your content and other people's content, that sends signals to the algorithm. Oh, people are engaging in this post, I'm going to push it out to more people who might like it. Seek out other artists you like and people in other spheres and comment on their posts, and maybe comment on somebody else's comment on that post. They might like what you say and look at your post. But it's just nice to make that contact. And that's another way to make networks and connections. When I was doing more the gardening side of things, I got together with two women who lived locally, but not like that close. And we'd met on Instagram, and then we met up in real life and did a couple of things together. And that was a really nice thing to do. So you just never know what it might lead to. You might even find yourself painting an ox. I'll put a video up about that if that intrigues you. And the one golden rule is that if anybody contacts you, so like a direct message or puts a comment under one of your posts or interacts in any way, it's really good manners and good kind of business sense to respond to them. So not just with a heart emoji, that's a bit late, unless you've got a post where you're just getting hundreds of comments, maybe that's okay. But if you, like most of us, you probably just get a few on each post, it's really nice to appreciate it. And you'll find that you'll get sort of regular people commenting, and that helps build a nice relationship. And I wanted to say a little bit about hashtags, which we put under our posts. Now, a few years ago, I think they had more importance, but nowadays, apparently the technology that Instagram uses, they can glean from a post by analysing it and analysing the caption what the content is. So you definitely don't need to put loads of hashtags. Instagram themselves recommend that you put 4 to 5 hashtags, and that's, so you just want to put something that, like if you're doing printing, if I've done a cyanotype, I'll put hashtag cyanotype. Jelly printing, I'll put jelly print, jelly printing, and I put the name, I put a creative garden because that's my website. And then I think this is quite important, if you put your name as one of the hashtags, and then if somebody actually looks that up on Instagram, they're going to see all your posts. So that's another way to find you. So I'm going to talk out in my garden because, hello Ellie, because it's looking quite nice at the moment, so I think it would make quite a nice backdrop. Come on Ellie, and Ellie wants to be in it as well. And I'm going to talk about reels now. Not everybody wants to make video content, and I understand that, because it can be quite time consuming. You have to learn a little bit how to edit, but it doesn't have to be very complicated unless you want it to be. my most popular reels have been ones where I'm just showing processes. And I think that's such an important point, that a process is a bit like a story. You sort of have a beginning, you haven't got anything, and at the end, you've created something. And it's a bit like telling any story, there's a progression. And having some sort of narrative, even in just a sort of few seconds in a reel, which I think it works really well to catch people's attention. Also, Instagram loves you to make reels. It pushes them out much more than it does with your posts and your carousels and your stories. When if you look at your analytics, you'll see it has a chart where it shows you how many followers see it and how many non-followers see it, which if you want to grow, you obviously want non-followers to see it. And normally at the beginning, it's quite heavy on followers, and then if it carries on to be a popular one, more and more non-followers will see it. And you can also see if anybody's saved it, and I'm always surprised how many people save them, and sometimes they share them to other people, and both those are good signals to the algorithm to keep pushing them out. So I would recommend having a go and to see how you get on. I use a overhead camera holder and light. I'll show you the one I use. I think I did have one before, wasn't so good. This one I really like, and it wasn't that expensive, about £40, I think. And I don't often use the light. It has a ring light. I'll probably use that more in the winter because I'm lucky I've got a big window where I do my art. But it's great to have that overhead shot. And as I was saying before, the fact that you can have your hands in it gives somebody a connection with your art. And if you're worried about editing, you can do this actually in Instagram itself. I don't tend to do that because I'm a control freak and I want to have more tools available than you have inside Instagram. I mean, I think they've got more and more, and I think it's quite sophisticated these days. And but the other thing is that you if you make it outside of the app, then you've got a copy and it doesn't have any branding on it. Within Instagram, if you then want to download it, it's got a watermark. There are ways you can get rid of that, but I just prefer having them in a separate place. And the app I first used to do this, I asked somebody I knew on the allotments where I live, who was a very big vegetable grower on Instagram, and she recommended Inshot. And you can have that in an unpaid version, although you get adverts, but it's quite user friendly. You get used to putting your clips next to each other. And the other two, there's one called Capcut, which I've used quite a bit, and that's got amazing amount of free tools with it. And one I haven't used, but I've heard recommended, is one called VN Video Editor. The problem with filming outside is that I've got a road next to me, so if you can hear noises, it's something very noisy. That sounded like a cow mooing. That they all work in a similar way. You import your clips and you put them together. You can trim them, you can duplicate them, you can reverse them. So if you film something and you think, oh, it's going to look better actually the other way, that's quite easy to do. Plus you get lots of transition, so you can softly fade from one shot to another, or you can do it with lights, or there are all sorts of kind of fun things you can use. I'd recommend not going too mad with all those sort of things, because I think that can be a bit annoying. And you also get effects like zooming in, that sort of thing, which if you do editing in a more serious way, which I do a bit now with my YouTube videos, you do all those things with more sophisticated tools. But these apps come with presets, what does it all for you. So actually they're really fun, and just have a play, as they're free, have a play with them and see how you get on. And it will seem quite befuddling to begin with, but it's amazing how quickly you can pick things up. I've, I've come indoors now because it's just so noisy out there. I don't know what's going on. Yes, I'm having a real merry-go-round, lots of different locations. I quite like it here. There's nice light when the blind is up. I'm always having a tussle with David because if there's the slightest bit of sun, he wants to put the blind down. Whereas as soon as the sun goes in, I want to put the blind up so we've got more light. So, but he's not here now, so I've opened it. And this is an upcycled lamp, and I'll link to the video where I show how I did that with some of my prints. And I rather like this corner with the greenery. Yes, so we were talking about the different apps you can get. And all these ones, as I said, are available in a free version, but just to say that there'll be either a watermark or there might be a frame at the end that's got the name of the editor. But there will always be some facility for getting rid of that. Normally you just have to select that bit and then you can put it in the dustbin. But you don't want to put that out on your video. If you do any sort of video that has you talking on it, I would put captions as well, and nearly all these apps can do that very quickly. You just have to go over it and make sure they've spelled things right. But you can choose all different styles of font. Capcut, hence its name, is really good for that. Because a lot of people, I do it sometimes as well, consume content with the sound down. So if you're giving out any information, have text on the screen as well. But if people have got the sound up, then the music is really important. And if you go into the music library, if it asks, you'll upload your video and then ask if you want to put sound on it. And if you look, any track that's got the little diagonal arrow, that means it's a trending sound. And the advantage of that is that Instagram is promoting those ones. And you'll see, mostly you can see how many numbers. And it's good to go for a lowish number, because if it's one that like a million people have used to make a video, the chance of yours being seen is quite low. So it's always good to try and get it when it's on the way up rather than it's got a bit saturated. So I tend to go for ones that are under about 3,000, and if they're just in the hundreds, then that's brilliant. Um, but if there's a track that really goes with your video that you just like, I don't think it really hurts you that much. I think too much attention is put on the trending sounds. Having said that, my two most popular reels, one of them I managed to catch a piece of music. I can't put it on here because copyright and everything, but I'll put the link so you can see it. And it was Jungle, Back on 74. And I heard that really early on and I thought, oh, that's a great track, and used it. And I think that combined with the visual just really kind of hit the mark. And that went on to have a really long life on Instagram. Well, both my reel and the piece of music, it went, loads of people started using it, but I got in there early. And my other really popular one was one where I used a sort of inspirational track, and it was actually John Cleese. I think he was giving an, I can't remember what it was from, but he was talking about creativity. And I just had that running while I was doing some of my printing. So they're kind of three things that people are really looking for when they're scrolling through Instagram. They want to be educated or entertained or inspired. And I do a mixture, I would say. Well, I hope I do all three. I hope it's entertaining, but I do a bit of education because I do tutorials, or I link to my longer tutorials on YouTube. But I think the inspiring one is quite a good thing for artists to remember. I like to think my audience is people who want to be creative but haven't got that much confidence and like to see how things are done. And that's the sort of person I have in mind when I'm making my art. And that's quite a good way of looking at it. Think of your sort of perfect audience as you're making your content. And if you want a more in-depth tutorial about making reels as an artist, then let me know in the comments and I'd be happy to make a video about that. Oh, but one thing I wanted to share is that when you upload your reel, when it gets to, so you've edited all and put a caption underneath and try and make that engaging. You could ask a question, say, oh, I did these two prints, did you prefer one to the other? And then put your hashtags. And then the last thing is you choose the cover of your reel. And you can just choose one of the stills and there'll be a bar that scrolls through and you can choose one of those. But if none of those are very good, I'd suggest that you take up the other option, which is to upload a still photograph. And then you can choose one that with good cover for your reel, but also it shows you what it looked like cropped into a square on your grid. So you can make sure that we're keeping up this nice aesthetic appearance of your grid. So you can choose something that you've already, if you've taken a photograph of the piece already, and you might have tweaked that in some editing software to make it look at its best, that's going to represent your art better than just a still from the video. And then, of course, you have stories on Instagram, which, as I'm sure you all know, they disappear after 24 hours. So I think this is a good place to put more casual stuff. You could share events and things you've been to with people that you might not. You might not want to show their faces for more than 24 hours. Also, if they were on your grid, it might be confusing for somebody looking at it. See, the sun's come out now. If David was here, he'd be out there pulling the blind down straight away. I'm going to soldier on. Um, and but it's a good place to put, as I say, more informal, relaxing stuff. You can have behind the scenes if you're like getting ready for an exhibition. You could show yourself doing that. You can, do you know what I found? People love seeing the reality of your studio because we all present it on our grids in this lovely space, all cropped in. And if you just do like a pan round and show, well, maybe it's just me, but the chaos of my studio when I'm in the middle of something, people love to see that.
You can save your stories into highlights if you go to the three dots in the top right hand corner, and this can be done retrospectively as well. And then make sure that you put a cover on each highlight category that's something quite eye-catching.
My final point I want to make is that if you don't have a website, it's a really good idea because I don't want you to think you can put all your content on Instagram and then it's going to be there forever because there's so many things that could go wrong. I've heard from so many people who've lost their account because they've been hacked or some perceived infringement or just there might be some technical thing and then everything on there might disappear. On a website, I mean, you're still beholden to the technology, but you've got much more control. And you can build it up slowly. I did mine and I started off with a blog and I've had it for just over a year and I've only just started to put a shop on it. You'll find that you'll get different levels. And the other thing is to build up an email list because again, you can then target people directly. You're not at the mercy to the whims of the algorithm. And I could talk about that if you're interested. So those are all my tips. I hope you found them useful. If you've got any that I haven't mentioned, please put them in the comments or ask any questions. And I hope you've got something valuable out of it.